Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Renekton, the Butcher of Sands. Look at this guy. He's got it all. Insurmountable strength.
Embrace the jaws of death.
Incredible technique.
Cut them down.
Unwavering equality for all.
Light meat, dark meat, it's all the same.
Now that's progressive. Renekton's a champion that's got it all, and you can too. What's the matter? Looking at your puny inferior human body and wondering how you can match the majesty that is a Shuriman god? Well, have I got a treat for you. For a limited time offer, I introduce you to the Renekton Way of Life package. This bad boy here will show you the ins and outs of having a destroyed psyche.
Warning, the Renekton Way of Life package does not include sharp teeth, scales, or anything remotely resembling Renekton. Following this package will most likely induce a state of psychosis that could ruin the entirety of your life. Please follow our program with caution.
Now you too can become just as paranoid, enraged, and psychotic as a crocagator himself in just one easy step. Yes, my people, all you have to do is completely isolate yourself to the point where you can't see, feel, or hear anything. And you don't even have to wait for a millennia, because the effects for a human happen after as little as a couple of days.
Warning, the Renekton Way of Life package does not include sharp teeth, scales, or anything remotely resembling Renekton. If you seriously need me to explain that this is just a joke to you, then please consider getting a help of a different variety.
So what are you waiting for, summoners? Call in now for the mental experience of a lifetime.
Warning, for the love of Aurelian's soul, do not follow the Renekton Way of Life package. Your mental health will be so irreversibly scarred that you might as well be a walking hollow shell of your former self. Please, just don't. Please.
And just a quick reminder, if you'd like to be notified of when I make a video, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell. It really helps me out a lot. Moving on. Obnoxious voice acting aside, I am not kidding when I say you are just as vulnerable as Renekton was to having your mind utterly shattered beyond repair. You might think Renekton was a victim of Xerath's spooky mind powers, but that's not the case. Xerath merely preyed on a slowly deteriorating mind due to the extreme condition Renekton was enduring. Renekton wasn't always the rage-filled monster of a champion he is now. Renekton once was human, and a remarkable one at that. Once a brave and loyal warrior, Renekton valiantly served Shurima, a thriving desert empire whose influence stretched across the corners of the southern continent. As a paragon of strength and conquest, Renekton became the most respected, loyal, and decorated veteran, along with his brother Nasus, who had also achieved great recognition for his strategic mind for warfare, but who would also fall gravely ill with an incurable disease. However, Nasus proved to be too valuable of an ally to lose to such a terrible fate. Therefore, he was given the opportunity of a lifetime. Ascension. A rare and sacred ritual that places worthy candidates under the light of the Sun Disk, the enormous artifact and symbol of the Empire that oversees all. Renekton helped his now disabled brother climb the steps towards ascension, knowing well that the intense rays of light from the ritual would completely obliterate him. But this did not matter to him, if it meant his brother would continue to live. The Sun Disk unleashed a blinding radiant light, and an array of colors enveloped the two brothers. Instead of feeling pain, he felt the light flow through him, granting him a new, immense crocodilian form. His brother Nasus, now free of any pain, stood with a new, towering, jackal-headed body. Both Renekton and Nasus were declared worthy and were now ascended warriors, near immortal demigods who can now serve in protecting Shurima for hundreds of years to come. However, his service was cut short as the hubris of Shurima's most ambitious emperor led to the creation of a new ascended warrior, one bent on the subjugation of all: Xerath. The great empire of Shurima was reduced to dust in his creation, proving to be too powerful for the brothers to handle. Renekton hurled himself along with Xerath into a tomb, pleading for his brother to seal the both of them away. With a heavy heart, NASA sealed the door for what was expected to be forever. This self-sacrifice set Renekton's mind on the path to ruin. He may be a massive, immortal crocodile now, but inside that body is still a vulnerable human mind, and humans cannot function in isolation. We literally, with no exaggeration, lose our minds. In isolation, the human mind starts to decay to the point that we experience severe issues. Issues like memory loss, disorientation, and impaired concentration. And the longer we spend in isolation, the worse it gets, to the point that we even experience psychosis. But how do we know this, you might be asking? Well, it's because we've observed it happen. And not only that, we see it practiced on a regular basis. Because of this, we have detailed and well-documented accounts of people who have undergone what is akin to torture itself. And we got them from the United States prison system. Solitary confinement is a punishment in which an inmate is placed within a cell separated from others and given extremely minimal access to any forms of communication. They are locked away for 22 hours a day, and some prisons even lock them with minimal sensory experiences, such as leaving them in complete darkness. As I stated earlier, this practice is practically torture, and thanks to over 80,000, yes, 80,000 cases of solitary confinement, we have had plenty of opportunities to observe what prolonged exposure to extreme confinement does to the mind. And let me tell you, it is terrifying. Psychologists who have observed cases of inmates within solitary confinement all reported similar effects. These people demonstrated cognitive disturbances that kept them from being able to think or maintain focus on anything. They also experienced emotional changes. Some inmates demonstrated more dangerous symptoms such as elevated levels of panic, hostility, rage, and poor impulse control. They also end up showing symptoms of depression, such as hopelessness and thoughts of suicide. But the most disturbing of all, some of these inmates experienced psychosis, an inability to tell what is real and what isn't. This includes things such as hallucinations, delusions, and incoherent speech. It is also a symptom commonly found within more advanced psychological disorders, and is used as sort of like a red flag for diagnosing a person. In some extreme cases, these people exhibited such severe symptoms that they needed to be hospitalized. What is happening to these people is torture. And it's not like we were learning about these effects now. Studies dating as far back as the 1950s already documented effects of confinement and sensory deprivation on the human mind, using actual participants. Donald O. Hebb led a study in 1951 where he had planned to make graduate students spend 6 weeks in small chambers. The students were ordered to wear gloves, earmuffs, and tinted goggles, all to strip the participants of some of our most vital sensations: sight, hearing, and physical touch. These students were left to do nothing in a small, confined space, with having minimal interaction. The most human interaction they had was being escorted to a bathroom while still wearing the gear. Hebb had hoped to observe these students for 6 weeks, but no one made it past a few days. The students began to show temporary but significant cognitive deficits. These graduate students who have already accomplished 4 years of study for a degree and are working towards getting a more advanced degree, were completely unable to do grade school level tasks. Oh, a college student not knowing anything about the real world? Sounds totally normal to me. No, shut up. We're talking about tasks like simple arithmetic, such as 5 times 5 or 10 times 10. It is expected for anyone with a 2nd grade education to be able to do this. So the fact that graduate students, after a couple of days within isolation, couldn't do this is really concerning, but understandable when you learn about what they were experiencing. These students demonstrated extreme restlessness, childish emotional responses, and vivid hallucinations. It's kinda hard to concentrate on anything when you're hallucinating a music box playing, or a full choir as you watch the sun rising over a church. Or how about the sensation of being hit in the arm by pellets fired from a miniature rocket ship? These are just some of the examples of participants reported feeling, according to one of Hebb's collaborators on the study. And this is all from just a couple of days. This evidence prompted Hebb to shut down the study immediately. Once out of their chambers, the students managed to recover from these temporary effects. Because of the potential threat to humanity, a study like this would never be accepted by today's standards. It would have been rejected on the spot. But I guess Hebb was lucky that the Institutional Review Board was set up 23 years after his experiment. Regardless, this is just one example of research that has already been done, and yet the prison system still practices solitary confinement despite all the evidence of potential damage it is causing. Now that I've gone over the incredibly harmful effects of even short-term solitary confinement, imagine experiencing all of that for an eternity. Within the tomb, Renekton was exposed to an ever-present darkness, with probably his only source of light radiating from Xerath's body. The two continued their battle in this darkness after being sealed, but it's not like they kept it up forever. Eventually, the two recognized the futility of it all, and just remained in the darkness as the literal centuries passed. Renekton was confined within an impenetrable cell, surrounded by an all-encompassing darkness, and with it, his mind was left to rot. This is how Xerath brainwashed Renekton into becoming a twisted, revenge-obsessed slayer. He saw an opportunity in Renekton's cracking mental state and proceeded to feed him poisonous words. Words that suggested he was truly betrayed by his own brother. Words that haunt him to this very day. Renekton's isolation has put him in a severe state of psychosis, and the most blatant evidence of this is the existence of the Whisperer. Within the depths of the tomb, Xerath's words would eventually manifest into its own being, a being that only Renekton has the discomfort of witnessing. This being has distorted Renekton's thoughts to the point that he can no longer tell what is truth. The Whisperer reminds him of the light being shut away, showing him the jackal face of his betrayer, looking down as he condemned him to the abyssal dark for all eternity. Tears gather at the corners of his cataract eyes, and he angrily wipes them away. The Whisperer knows every secret path into his mind, twisting every certainty he once clung to, every virtue that made him the hero revered as a god throughout Shurima. We know this is an auditory hallucination simply because of the fact that Xerath and Renekton were the only ones trapped within the tomb. There wasn't a third being just sitting there waiting to screw with whatever poor fool stumbled in. We even see that this hallucination can become a visual nightmare for Renekton. After being freed from his prison by a treacherous noble woman, Renekton was now able to roam the sands, but the Whisperer could reach him even outside of those walls. The light that once remade his flesh now pains him. It burned him raw and seared his soul as he wandered the desert, lost and alone, tormented by a hatred he did not understand. He has taken refuge from its unforgiving light, but even here, squatting and weeping in this dripping cave, the Whisperer has found him. The shadow on the wall slithers around him, always muttering, always conspiring to feed his bitterness. He presses long, gnarled hands that end in vicious ebon talons to his temples, but he cannot shut his constant companion in the darkness out. He never could. Here we see that the Whisperer is not some being restricted to the tomb. This is a hallucination that can even take a physical appearance in the form of a creeping shadow, and try as he might to block out the sound. Well, as the lore states, he never could. The Whisperer is a manifestation of Renekton's psychosis caused by his centuries of confinement in a tomb where the only visible light came from Xerath, and the only words he was exposed to were the viperous venom being fed to him, which would eventually shape into the Whisperer, becoming its own entity within Renekton's mind. And we haven't even talked about his dangerously high levels of rage and hostility, an aspect of Renekton's behavior that is so recognizable that it is a staple mechanic within the actual game, or his memory loss. Renekton was the one who told Nasus to seal him away, but now he believes it was Nasus's idea to do so out of spite and jealousy. How do you forget a crucial decision like that? By being trapped in darkness for centuries, that's how. There are even more facts about his past that he cannot remember, but I figured the decision that started this all was the big one to focus on. However, the saddest part is that we even see Renekton, after these years of torment, have thoughts of suicide. I am not making this up, have a look for yourself. Worse, he is no longer sure he can die. He looks at the weapon before him, a crescent-bladed axe without a handle. It belonged to a warrior king of Acathia, but a fleeting memory of breaking its haft as he had broken its bearer's army returns to him. He remembers remaking it, but not why. Perhaps he will use it to slice open his rigid throat and see what happens. Will blood or dust flow? The only thing keeping him from doing so is his newly found thirst for revenge. I am terrified of what may happen to him when he finally achieves what he wants. Increased rage and hostility, memory loss, evidence for psychosis, and thoughts of suicide. Renekton is practically a textbook example of the effects of extremely long-term confinement. And the takeaway is that this didn't happen because Xerath was given some mind control powers from his ascension ritual. He merely took advantage of a human mind that was decaying from the effects of confinement and sensory deprivation, effects that any human can experience under the right conditions, including you. How's that for a chilling thought? Might make you want to rethink your desire for a vacation to the moon to get away from people. Jokes aside, Renekton's story is a tragedy. A hero granted incredible power and immortality was destroyed by his most human quality. But one question still remains. Renekton was not alone. Renekton became a victim of the crippling effects of confinement, but what about Xerath? Xerath seemed to remain in control throughout his captivity. Or was he? Well, I guess that's a question to tackle for another time. Thank you so much for watching, my people. If you really liked this video, then please consider subscribing and ringing the bell icon. Personally, I never really wanted to say to do so in my videos, but thanks to YouTube analytics, I have noticed that most of the people that watch my videos aren't even subscribed, which is a very strange thing to see. I think this is like the best way I can like tackle that head on. And it's also what is recommended to everybody. Every time I look it up on YouTube, everyone says, be sure to remind your followers, and it's like, I don't want to, but hey, if it's proven to work, so be it. And as always, my people, thank you for watching.